is fantastic.
We'll see the timer. Thanks. You don't need luck. I don't think.
You got the easy one.
See a little here. Says he or she. We ain't got no he's.
That's right.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Hi. My name is Bruce Campbell. I'm the second vice chair of the Westchester County Democratic Committee. Thank you for joining us tonight. Before we begin, will you please rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Thank you. Excuse me, can you please have a seat? We haven't even begun. And you give me, All right, tonight's debate is sponsored by the Westchester County Democratic Committee. Thanks go to our chair, Suzanne Berger. I also want to thank Brian Goodman, also in front, who's doing double duty tonight. Brian's on Zoom and will be our timekeeper. And thanks to the other volunteers we had working this evening. They're from Lewisboro, Newcastle, Yorktown, Mount Pleasant, and Peekskill. There are also several elected officials or honored guests tonight. Without recognizing them all individually, I'd like to thank them for coming and attending as well. So we have to start this evening with some breaking news. If you haven't heard, Peter Chatzky, one of the candidates who was invited tonight, suspended his campaign this afternoon. So the field is smaller, and tonight we will hear from 3 congressional candidates, not 4. They have all qualified for the ballot and stood out from the rest when examining several objective criteria. They're standing in public polls or surveys, the amount of money raised, including cash on hand, and significant endorsements. They all want to beat Mike Lawler and reclaim the House seat for the 17th district. Please join me in welcoming the candidates. Cait Conley. Cait is a national security expert who served 16 years as a decorated active duty officer. Cait resides in Ossining and has never held public office. Beth Davidson. Beth is a Rockland County legislator. She's also a resident of Nyack. Beth has also served 2 terms on the Nyack School Board. Effie Phillips-Staley. Effie is currently a trust down in Tarrytown, where she resides. Now, Effie has also been an executive for nonprofit organizations. Questioning the candidates will be 2 veteran journalists who have covered this district and this county extensively. Barret Seaman, over here. Wave, Barret. Barret is the editor of the Hudson Independent. He's also been a correspondent for Time magazine, where, among other assignments, he covered the White House. In 2020, he moderated the Democratic primary debate for Congress at Mercy College. Jeff Coltin. Jeff is the editor-in-chief of City and State magazine. He has also worked for Politico, where he co-authored the New York Playbook. In 2022, Jeff was named the New York Press Association's Writer of the Year. And so, with that being said, I want to turn the evening over to our moderators. Gentlemen.
All right. Thank you very much, Bruce. And thank you to the Westchester Dems. Thank you to our candidates for being here. Thank you for an engaged crowd. Really appreciate this. And this is a very important debate. This is being watched across the entire state. I mean, this is the race that Democrats want to flip in New York, and this is the race that Republicans really want to hold in New York. It's getting national attention, and so it's a privilege to be here on the ground, helping with this debate and being engaged here with Barret. So before we begin, a couple of ground rules. In order to avoid delays and to respect the candidates, we ask you no signs or banners. And the really hard one, no vocal responses to what's said. I can tell we have an engaged and cheering crowd, but we really do ask you to just keep it respectful and keep it quiet. And because our focus, everybody here, is to hear from the candidates, and we want to focus on that. So please, we don't want to have to boot anybody from this beautiful room. Nobody wants to leave here. It's gorgeous, you know. So I'll leave it at that. And Barret.
Okay. And now for the rules. Candidates will have 2 minutes for the opening statement and 2 minutes for a closing statement. All right, getting a little closer. Each question will go to a specific candidate. She will have 1.5 minutes to answer. There may or may not be a follow-up question. If so, the candidates will have 1 minute to respond to that. Then, if they choose, all other candidates will have 1.5 minutes as a rebuttal to what has been said. Time will be kept electronically. We can see it, you can't. On the screen that all the candidates, as they say, can see.
Mm-hmm. And so we drew straws for who goes first. So 2 minute opening statement. And we'll go with Effie first, and then Cait, and then Beth. So Ms. Phillips-Staley, take us away.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to start by saying this is going to be a debate, but I'm very proud to be on the stage with these other 2 women who are in this fight. So my name is Effie Phillips-Staley. I am a trustee in the village of Tarrytown, a lifelong worker in the nonprofit sector, always centered around social justice. And I'm a mother who raised my 2 children in the district, both of whom went to public schools. And I'm running because a group of Latino activists in my community, people who watched Trump win a second term and knew exactly what was coming, sat down with me and said that I should run. And that is something I take very, very seriously. My mother was an immigrant from El Salvador. My dad, a working class guy from Oklahoma. Families like mine and like all the people here represent the best of our nation in this pluralistic society that we live in, with its diverse, beautiful fabric here in New York 17. But for too long, our government has failed to fully represent us. The families in this district are not struggling because of bad luck. They're struggling because the political system that was built to serve donors, not the people, keeps blocking the changes that most of us are demanding. We need 66,000 new homes in this district. We need childcare that doesn't cost more than rent. We need healthcare that isn't a financial trap. And we need an immigration system that is just and does not rip families apart. And we especially need a government that does not launch us into insane, unnecessary wars. What we don't have, however, is a representative with the independence to fight for this. Mike Lawler plays a moderate, but it's to protect a political system that hasn't thought about families in the district for a long time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll have more chance, absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Conley.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming out tonight and for caring so much to be here. I am Cait Conley. I'm a proud West Point graduate, Army Special Ops combat veteran, and daughter of the Hudson Valley. My family's roots in this district go back 4 generations. To my great-grandfather and grandfather who worked in the brickyard in Montrose. To my dad, a construction worker born and raised in Hopewell Junction. To my mom, born in Peekskill, who was a U.S. postal worker for 48 years serving communities up and down this Hudson Valley. And it is the values of my family and our communities that have instilled in me the desire to serve this country and our community. The importance of grit, working hard, and courage to stand up and fight for what is right. That's why as a junior in high school at Pine Bush, when the terror attacks and 9/11 happened, I went off to serve. I went to West Point, graduate the top of my class, served 16 years as an active duty Army officer, deploying overseas 6 times, earning 3 Bronze Stars, and serving as one of the first women in special operations leadership. Then going off to the White House and serving as the Director for Counterterrorism on the National Security Council, and then serving as a senior executive at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, where I worked with election officials of both sides across this country to push back against Trump's big lie that the 2020 election was stolen and to ensure the security and integrity of our democracy. And I say all of that because with everything that I have seen and everything that I have done, I never thought I would ever feel like the greatest threat to our country and to our future would be coming from within our own borders. But that is exactly what is happening with the Trump administration, enabled by cowards in Congress like Mike Lawler. I am watching the country that I was willing to die for become something I barely recognize. And that is unacceptable. And that is why we will take this fight to Mike Lawler and make sure we offer New York 17 the leadership it deserves and this country and our communities deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Davidson.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much to the Westchester County Dems for hosting tonight. Thank you to Barret and Jeff for moderating, and thank you to you all for coming out. I'm Beth Davidson. I'm a working mom of 2 public school kids. My son Hugo's here in the front row, and I'm a Rockland County legislator who fights every day for the community I've called home for 20 years. This campaign isn't about me, though. It's not about any of us. It's about you, the voters, and what kind of leadership meets this moment for our community and for our country. To me, that means taking it to Mike Lawler with everything we've got and not looking for ways to divide ourselves as Democrats. It means sticking true to our democratic values and not being complicit in this administration's cruelty and lawlessness. I will never work for a company that has anything to do with Donald Trump's Department of Homeland Security or Defense, particularly when it's engaging in lawless ICE raids or illegal wars. What I will do is step into the breach every day for the community I serve. When Mike Lawler and his allies shut down the government, I led the effort to secure millions of dollars in food relief so that my constituents on SNAP could still feed their families. When he brought the energy secretary up to Indian Point, I used my platform as the environmental chair to say, hell no. And when ICE started terrorizing my community and killing American citizens, I stepped up again and introduced a bill to protect my constituents from ICE. From the moment Mike Lawler caught wind of my bill, he has attacked me relentlessly. But if he thinks he and his MAGA allies can intimidate me, he doesn't know me. More than anyone else on this stage, I not only know how to fight, I know how to win. From helping to elect dozens of Democratic pro-choice women across the country, to leading the team of Democrats that won the first Democratic supermajority in Rockland County history on our legislature, right in Mike Lawler's backyard. I'm asking for your support on June 23rd so that I can take that fight to Mike Lawler in November and to Washington as your member of Congress next year. Thank you.
And now we go to the questions specifically. And this first question will go to Cait Conley. Democratic candidates lost to Mike Lawler in the past 2 elections. Why would you do any better?
New York 17, coming out of the 2021 redistricting, is now 4 counties. When you look at these 4 counties, 28% of registered voters are unaffiliated or independent. We no longer have enough registered Democrats to win this district alone. It's purple. We need a Democratic candidate that will inspire voters to choose them as a person, not just a party. And when you look at what it's going to take to get that done, I don't like to quote Mike Lawler often, but I'll quote him here because it's part of how I'm going to beat him. Over 50% of households in New York 17 are either veterans, the family of veterans, first responders, or family of first responders. My ability to connect with these folks and to win them over and their trust is just different. And it's going to make a difference come November. We have seen, as Mike Lawler has faced and beaten politicians twice. If we want a different kind of outcome in November, we need a different kind of Democrat. And I have shown my ability to build a coalition across this district. I am the only one on this stage that has earned endorsements from elected officials in all 4 counties. And it is that kind of leadership, of unifying us, of building coalitions that I will do regardless of political affiliation to come out and make sure in November we send Mike Lawler home.
Beth, it's your turn.
Thank you so much. I agree we need a different kind of Democrat this year to go up against Mike Lawler. And it isn't someone who has spent the last 10 years in Washington. That is how we got Mike Lawler in the first place in 2022, because Sean Patrick Maloney had spent the previous 10 years in DC and had a lot of national support, but not a lot of local support. I'm proud to have served this community for the last 10 years and to have lived here for the last 20, building coalitions around issues like clean water and reproductive rights and healthcare and gun safety. I'm proud to have collected more petition signatures than anyone else on this stage from almost 400 volunteers who went out and knocked doors and gathered petitions for me. This is also a 4-county strong coalition that I'm proud to build. And that I also have, I would add 3,000 in-district donors. Those are people that will go out and knock doors for me and vote for me. And that's the kind of coalition that beats Mike Lawler in November. I can tell you I've known him for almost 10 years, and he would like nothing more than to run against a Biden administration insider who just moved to this district.
Effie?
Thank you for this question. I have won 3 times in this district and had the opportunity to see where the Democratic Party succeeds and where it fails. And I will say that where the Democratic Party fails is at having a large enough tent that is inclusive of the many people who choose not to vote at all, but would benefit from actually being a Democrat. And I speak specifically about a race in my village, 25% Hispanic. And the first time I ran, I said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to turn out this vote. And that as a strategy was rejected. It was rejected because Hispanics were perceived to be low propensity voters, that they didn't matter. And I argue that that is why we lost the last 2 races, because we're not paying attention to all the communities that we need to be paying attention to. The working class, people under 30, progressive voters, people of color, all who have felt disenfranchised by this party and by the process. So the regular game plan is not going to win. We are going to keep losing unless we can turn out that kind of vote. And that is entirely what my campaign is designed around, because I see victory in 2 ways. One, we have to beat Mike Lawler, but we have to beat him with the largest coalition possible. The Democrats haven't been doing it. That's what I'm working to do.
Thank you very much. Now, we just spoke about that a little bit, but I'd like to get a little more specific. Right now, we're obviously speaking to a Democratic audience. You were talking about how to win over, but let's talk specifically. The winner in November will need to win over independent voters, maybe even win over some Republicans. So how would you, as a candidate in November, reach across the aisle? What will you do to win, specifically non-Democrats? And 90 seconds on this one, and we're going down the line. So we'll start with Ms. Davidson.
Thank you so much. So I'm so proud to say that I do represent a district, District 10 in the Rockland County Legislature, that is a microcosm of New York 17. It's a district that only has a 48% Democratic registration, but I won it with 57% of the vote, which means that Republicans and independents already vote for me. I'd also note that I've delivered results in divided government, even in a year and a half in the county legislature. I've cut taxes, passed common sense gun safety reforms, preserved hundreds of acres of open space, all by building coalitions to advance the agenda and the causes that I believe in. And so I already know how to work across the aisle and deliver results. I agree that will be very important in this next Congress. We're going to take back the House. Hopefully we take back the Senate, but we'll still have Donald Trump in the White House. It's going to be a time for bridge builders, and I'm proud to be one of them.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips-Staley.
Thank you. So I always answer this question by saying that if the policies that I put forward and fight for would work for my dad, who was a lifelong Republican, a guy with a high school education, a blue-collar military veteran, then I'm getting it right. The policies that of affordability, of affordable housing, of having a social safety net is exactly how my family was able to move from being working class to the middle class. This kind of message appeals to everyone because so many people are hurting right now under this administration. And so that's the kind of message I'm going to carry. And again, I'm going to keep my father in mind as we do this. The working class will benefit from a populist, progressive message. And that's what I'm going to take out there. The other thing I want to say is about independents. I know a lot of independents. These are people who left the Democratic Party because they were so deeply frustrated with how difficult it was to get anything in terms of listening to communities, Hispanic communities, communities of color, that sort of thing. The Democratic Party has never been as unpopular as it is right now, and we're losing people in droves. So if we keep our messaging based on the needs of the people, that's how we're going to get people back. And that is my methodology.
Thank you. And Ms. Conley, winning over independents and Republicans.
Over the last year, I've traveled this district and met with so many people who expressed the same frustration. And that is with politicians on both sides of the aisle and how corrosive and polarized our country and our community has become. We have to be able to bring people together if we're going to ensure that America's best days are still ahead of us. And that goes back to having a candidate where, as much as I cannot stand Mike Lawler, it has to be more than what we're just fighting against. It has to also be about what we're fighting for. And I will tell you, my ability to work and earn trust of people, independents and Republicans who still believe in this country and true American values, which Donald Trump and Mike Lawler do not represent. They're seeking someone that they can believe in again. And that is where my 16 years of military service, 6 tours overseas, leading America's sons and daughters in combat zones to defend this nation, to defend everyone in this district, is different and allows us to connect and earn respect in a different way, because I have put it all on the line. It's not about talk, it's about action. And that is where I represent the next generation that is coming up, that has watched politicians and political operatives on both sides of the aisle get our country into this mess. And what I represent is the next generation coming up who will do differently, because we have to bring this nation together and to win New York 17.
As you well know, we're at war. Do you believe, and I'll address this to Beth first, do you believe that Trump was justified in attacking Iran? And if not, I'm assuming that at least some of that is going to be a not, how would you fault the decision?
You're up. First again? Okay. I've said from the beginning of this conflict that Donald Trump is the most dangerous and dishonest president we have ever had. And he has dragged us into yet another conflict with no obvious off-ramp. And Mike Lawler, more importantly, has rubber stamped it every step of the way. Not only did he say over the weekend that he would support putting troops on the ground, and let me say this is personal. During the first week of this conflict, we lost a member of the military from my town, Clarkstown, Major Sorfley Davies. So this isn't something that's happening somewhere else. It's touching my community very personally. And so I would also say that it's making the entire Middle East more unstable and threatening our democracy here at home as well. And so I support ending this war as quickly as possible. You know, he always says something is 2 weeks away, and I don't think any of us believe that, but we need to bring this war to a close before anyone else gets killed.
Effie?
We are spending $1.5 billion a day on this war, on this terrifyingly unjust war that frankly, I believe was launched by a madman. It's my understanding that decades of military intelligence have indicated that a war like this is not winnable, that it is a folly, and yet here we are for reasons that are inexplicable to me, but I will say what we can spend $1.8 billion a day on in this country if our government actually cared about the well-being of our people. That is making sure everybody has health care, being able to fund childcare, being able to invest in housing for people, being able to work on issues of affordability that we are all struggling with. It is staggering that Mike Lawler has not stood up in defense of the people of this district and the needs of the people of this district, but instead continues to support this president, even when he makes a genocidal statement, saying that he would wipe out an entire civilization, right? We cannot flip this Congress fast enough to bring this insanity under control. And I certainly hope, you know, call me crazy, maybe Mike Lawler will come to his senses and take the lead in trying to change this. I know he won't, and that's why we have to take him out.
Okay.
I've got lots of feelings on this, so I'll try to do it in a minute and a half. Look, as the only person on this stage who has actually gone to combat zones, who has fought in wars in the Middle East, I know how serious war and conflict is. I've had the responsibility of America's sons and daughters on my shoulders doing that. And I will tell you, as someone who has been to war, the last thing you ever want to see is another generation of America's sons and daughters, or any sons and daughters, go to war. We woke up a month ago to a war in Iran that a 5-time draft dodger and a Secretary of Defense who knows more about Botox than bombs got us into. Without a plan, without an exit strategy, without clear objectives, without congressional authorization, and without the American people's support. This is not how this happens. This is unacceptable. Hegseth needs to be held accountable. And the sad thing is, we do have real things that we should be spending this funding on. We should make sure Iran doesn't get a nuclear weapon as the largest purveyor of lethal aid to terror groups in the world. But what Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth got us into isn't making America any more safe. They've replaced one Ayatollah with a 30-year younger son who's even more hardline. This is not about national security and America's best interests. This is about incompetence, and it needs to end.
Thank you. And actually, we will give a chance to talk more. Don't worry. Because I do want to get, and we'll start with Ms. Phillips-Staley first on this one, 90 seconds, to get a little more specific on this. I mean, as you mentioned, critics have said that this war has been a strategic failure, leaving Iran stronger than it was before. How does this war end, and what should House Democrats do? You want to join the House Democratic, at this point, minority, maybe next year majority. How should the House Democrats respond? So, Ms. Phillips-Staley.
The House Democrats, well, I will say the House in general, have been conceding their power for far too long. We are, or Congress is, supposed to be a check on the executive branch, and it absolutely has not been. And frankly, I feel that the Democratic, frankly, I believe that the Democratic caucus has not been aggressive enough in drawing a hard line about making sure that this war stops. We may not have the votes, but we have the ability to stand up strong, speak very forcefully, interrupt as much as we can, because this war, and I call it a war, and I heard Mike Lawler call it a war too, even though he tries to parse his words about this, is entirely unjust. It's putting us in danger. It's putting the Middle East in danger. And so this is exactly what Congress is supposed to stop. This is what we have to stop. And again, this is why we absolutely need to flip the House.
Thank you, Ms. Conley.
So when you look at the War Powers Resolution Act that was being proposed in Mike Lawler's no vote, he showed exactly who he was. In the Army, when you fail to do your job, there's a saying. It's called dereliction of duty, and you're held accountable. And what we've seen out of this Republican-led Congress is complicity. Mike Lawler is the worst of it. We saw earlier this week how Mike Lawler had the audacity to justify Donald Trump threatening to use the American military to commit war crimes. That is the most un-American and unethical thing you could imagine. And you saw Mike Lawler making the case about how it was justified. He is unfit to represent us. And because we have cowards like that in Congress, they are not using the oversight mechanisms that they have. And this is a failure. I say this as someone, I'm the only one here who has actually worked with Congress. I spent 4 years working with members, working with committees. I've been at the most senior levels of the federal government, from the trenches of combat zones to the White House Situation Room. I know how government is supposed to work and how this administration is continuously failing the American people alongside Congress. And we have to demonstrate leadership where we must explain to people how the long-term security of America depends on responsibility, and the use of force should always be a last resort.
Thank you, Ms. Davidson.
One of the most vital reasons we need to take back the House and cut Donald Trump's presidency in half legislatively is to reclaim our moral place in the world as a beacon of democracy. I agree with both of the women on this stage that this war is wrong, that Mike Lawler has covered up for Donald Trump's insanity. I'm sure folks saw him earlier this week on television, somehow apologizing for Donald Trump, saying that, oh, it was just civilian infrastructure. Still a war crime, still a war crime. And the fact that we all had to be glad to wake up yesterday morning is not the kind of country I want to continue raising my children in. And by the way, let's also remember that Donald Trump plays, I guess, multidimensional chess, because he also had his vice president doing a MAGA rally in Hungary in the middle of all of this. Well, we used to be a country that spread democracy. Now we have a president who wants to spread autocracy. I've had enough of it. I know we all have. It is time to take back the House and take back the House Foreign Affairs Committee so we can put a stop to this madness.
While we're on the subject of foreign policy, let's turn to another not unrelated area. The traditional U.S. position on Israel is to support and defend it against all enemies. But a significant cohort of the Democratic base feels that Netanyahu government and the IDF have violated international law with indiscriminate bombing in Gaza. Where do you stand? We start with Beth.
Ms. Conley.
Ms. Conley, sorry. Yeah. With Cait Conley. I'll never get this straight.
So this is an area where, as someone, again, who has gone to war and seen the consequence of it, we have to always ensure that war is a last resort. I do believe as America, we have a responsibility to support the safety and security of Israel and the Jewish people. And I think we also have a responsibility to push for a two-state solution so that all peoples can have safety and security. And I do believe, just as I am a proud American and pro-American, I can also criticize Trump and this government and what it does. I can be pro-Israel and say we need to have really hard conversations on how conflict is conducted, because this is about the safety and security of generations to come. I am also very concerned about what is happening inside of our own borders, where we are seeing anti-Semitism rise in our own communities. We are seeing hate take hold. And I blame Donald Trump for a lot of this, as he has normalized hate, as he has spread hate, as he has capitalized on it, inflamed it. There is nothing more un-American than hate. This is a nation built on freedom and equality for all. And we have to stop what this administration is doing in ruining the very fabric and foundation of our own country.
Beth? Same question, Beth.
Thank you. So as a Jewish woman who has friends and family in Israel, this is very personal to me. And the 17th Congressional District is 20% Jewish. For those who don't know, fun fact, it's the 8th largest Jewish community in the world. So this is an issue that touches every corner of this district very personally. My daughter was actually in Israel in August of 2023 for the most interfaith, multiracial, amazing experience she could have had. Also marching in the protests against the Supreme Court issue with Benjamin Netanyahu. And I would also say that as much as I love America and detest the Trump administration, I do love Israel, and yet disagree with so much of what the administration has done. And I'd also say that Donald Trump has been far too weak to stand up to Bibi Netanyahu in ways that we should have been all of this time, bringing home the hostages much earlier, bringing the conflict to a close much quicker. Too many people died, both in Israel and in Palestine. And I do also hope for a two-state solution, but we're not going to get there unless we engage other countries in the region, and while we're also fighting another unnecessary war right next door. We need to bring all of these conflicts to a close and engage other countries in the region to what I personally want to see, which is a path to self-determination for the Palestinian people and a safe and secure Israel.
Effie?
Thank you. Throughout my life, I think the one value that has guided everything I do is putting people first so that everybody has the opportunity to thrive. And I believe that can only happen when universal human rights are actually universal, that they apply to everyone. The Middle East, Israel, and Palestine is a deeply unsafe place. Palestinians and Israelis are both in danger. I was able to go visit Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, and the West Bank in this tiny window of time where it was relatively safe to do it. And I did it because I needed to learn by seeing it, by being there, what the conditions were and why. And when I came back, even before I was back, it was clear to me that Israel was creating terrible apartheid conditions for Palestinians that were unthinkable in the name of safety, but I do not see how this can create safety. We see a situation where the death penalty is now being applied only to Palestinians, where there are two unequal legal systems. It is appalling. And when people spoke to me, Israelis, former IDF members, Palestinians, they said the only thing that will stop this, that will stop what they called a genocide is withholding aid to Israel. That was the only thing, and only we had the power to do that. And that's not to make people unsafe. That is to change the direction of a government that they described as becoming fascist. That is what I saw, and I could not live with myself if I did not say these things to this group. We in the United States have the power to create good in the world. We have immense political power, immense economic power, immense diplomatic power. And we have the ability, just as we did with South Africa, and I know this will upset some people, to say, no, a system that is as unequal as this and is as unjust as this should not be funded with US tax dollars. And we have a law about that too. It's the Leahy Law. It is the Leahy Law. I believe that everyone in Israel should be safe.
Thank you.
Effie.
And everyone in Palestine as well.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And turning to Ms. Davidson first this time. 90 seconds. We want to talk affordability. And the economy and affordability appears to still be voters' #1 concern across every poll I've seen, basically. If elected, what would you do in Congress to keep prices down? And please be specific, which prices and how? I mean, what can you do as a Congress member to keep prices down? So again, to Ms. Davidson, please.
Sure. So as a member of the Rockland County Legislature, this isn't theoretical to me, and it's not something I'll just tell you I will do down the road. It's something I am doing right now. Moms, we always think 3 steps ahead. So the moment the conflict in Iran began and we saw that oil could go between $100 and $150 a barrel, I quickly reached out to my chair and said, we should do a gas tax holiday to make sure that we're providing some relief at the pump for our constituents. And this does make a difference where I live. People commute long distances to work, often because they can't afford to live in the places where we work. Another issue that I hope we'll touch on, the cost of housing, which drives all other costs up. We also need to bring down the cost of prescription drugs. That is such a huge weight on so many families, along with the cost of childcare. We're seeing a real brain drain from the Hudson Valley because it is so expensive. And I can say this as someone who's raised 2 children in this district. We have a patchwork of systems that simply doesn't work. I'm so glad to see that we're getting more universal pre-K and 3K, but you can't just carry a kid around in a purse for the first 3 years of its life. We need to provide affordable, high quality childcare because we know that that improves outcomes for all of our children. So those are just something I've already done and something I'm excited to get work on when I'm in Congress. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Phillips-Staley on affordability.
So from 2020 to 2022, inflation rose 14%, while corporate profits rose 74%. That's 5 times the rate of inflation. So this is not an inflation issue. This is actually price gouging. And our political system lets it happen because the same corporations that are gouging our people are the ones that are funding the campaigns of the people who are supposed to take care of this. And so what would I do if I were in Congress about this? I'd fight for a federal ban on grossly excessive price increases and actually use the FTC to enforce this. That's what they're supposed to be doing. That is what they're supposed to be doing, but they were gutted by DOGE, right? And so I'd also fight to repeal Trump's tax cuts. I think that's incredibly essential. That handed trillions to the wealthy while working families were told that there was nothing left. And I would pass an ultramillionaires tax. That's a wealth tax on people worth over 50 million and a 6% on people worth over 1 billion. So that is what it would create, the funds that we need to fund housing, fund childcare, fund healthcare, so many needs within this district. And I would also work for a micro transaction tax of 0.1%. This would also fuel the
Thank you.
coffers as well, because people deserve to be cared for. We
Thank you very
shouldn't be
much.
working on. Okay, sorry, thank you.
And Ms. Conley.
So I was born and raised here in the Hudson Valley by a single mom raising 3 girls working for the Postal Service. When we talk about affordability, I remember as a kid literally hunting in the cars and couch cushions to find 50 cents to help my mom buy a coffee at the deli on the way to the post office. It's not a hypothetical. These challenges, these struggles, they're still my family. And so when we talk about what we have to get after this and what makes this administration so heinous, it is a very long laundry list. But what is also unforgivable is how they have done nothing to help working class families and middle class families across this country and right here in the Hudson Valley. So the first thing we need to do is undo the harm. That means ending the illegal foreign tariffs that have raised prices on everything from prescriptions to groceries to the cost of housing, construction materials, at a time where we're facing a housing crisis. We also need to reinstate the premium tax credits. What kind of cruel, I can't curse, cruel thing sits there and rips health care away from our most vulnerable at a time where we're already facing an affordability crisis? But we also need to do more. We need to do things that also solve problems going beyond this administration. And that is where I would champion something called the Public Service Loan Program, which is the parallel and equivalent program of what I got to benefit as a veteran with the VA loan program. This public service loan program would apply to nurses, to teachers, to first responders who after 10 years of service would qualify for the benefit, where they don't have to put 20% down to qualify for competitive interest rates and without paying PMI. Let's allow our folks to live in the communities that they serve. They've earned that.
Thank you. We're going to try to keep a little closer to the clock here as we go forward. Let's zero in on one important aspect of the affordability question, which is housing. So what is the government's role in creating more housing? How should they go about creating more housing, funding it? What kind of housing should they be promoting? Start that with Beth.
Housing is the crisis that fuels all other economic crises in this country. Housing is healthcare, housing is job security, housing is food security, housing is the wraparound services that helps everyone live purposeful and productive lives. And I'm proud to say that there never was a housing committee on the Rockland County Legislature until our supermajority won it, because we knew that was the #1 crisis we had to step up and solve. We're at least 30,000 units short of housing between Westchester and Rockland, and that's something we need to address immediately. So we did start what's called a HALO, Housing Action Loan Opportunity Fund, that incentivizes developers to buy in and build affordable housing. And I'm so thrilled that we are starting our first flagship project in New City, rehabilitating the decrepit Sane building that sat vacant for 25 years until our majority took over and made this a priority. I'll also say at the other end of the spectrum, though, that we have villages in Rockland County that haven't seen a new subsidized Section 8 voucher since 1989. We need to seriously invest in every kind of housing, from market rate to workforce housing to subsidized housing. It's the only way that we can grow and thrive. If we continue to see so much out-migration from New York State, we could lose an additional 2 congressional seats. That's how vital this is, and why it's crucial that we build housing that's appropriate to the area where it's being built, and that we make it affordable for people. We are seeing way too many people having to leave the Hudson Valley, and we have to do better.
Thank you. Effie, Phillips-Staley.
Thank you. As a trustee in Tarrytown, housing is what we have relative control over zoning, over what gets built, over how much affordable housing we negotiate with developers. And we had sort of to me, it was slightly heartbreaking conversation where some of our local firefighters came to us with the problem of we're losing too many of our volunteer firefighters because they can't afford to live in the area. And this has a direct impact on our safety. So what What do we need from Congress? What we need from Congress are federal tax credits for affordable construction to enable municipalities to build the kind of housing that we need to keep people present. What we're talking about in the village right now is how do we create affordable housing that's specifically, as Beth said, for workforce workers so that we can keep people here. But we also have to incentivize the construction of, again, at least 66,000 new units within the district at all price points to make sure that the prices level out and that people can afford to buy their first homes, that they could, that there's sufficient housing, that the rent doesn't go completely out of control as it has been. So within my policy platform, which I call the Suburban Progress Agenda, that is exactly what we are working to do. We need to cap rent increases on subsidized housing, and we need to build more subsidized housing. We need, and we hear this all the time, families complaining that their children can't return to where they grew up and buy a home. So we need to have cash incentives for people who need to buy their first home and want to do it within the district.
Okay. Thank you. Cait?
So over the last year, traveling to every corner of this district, concerns over housing have been shared by so many families that are struggling, whether it's folks who have aged out of the homes they raised their families in and want to downsize but can't afford to. I think about my mom, who was scared to retire after serving the Postal Service in our communities for 48 years because she was afraid she wasn't going to be able to afford to continue to live here. To families who are unable to get their kids to move back because they can't afford to buy a home here because they've been priced out. And you think about, as a nation, how we've progressed, where in the 1970s, the average age of a first-time home buyer was 21, and now it's 40. I mean, this is us failing, and we must do better, and the federal government must have a role in that. We haven't faced a housing crisis like this since post-World War II, and that led the federal government to pursue Levittown. So yes, I believe it's time for creative solutions, for the federal government to step up and do its damn job to solve hard problems. And that is where, as someone who has worked with places like FEMA that does grants coming out of the Department of Homeland Security to help our communities build. Yes, we need to roll back the foreign tariffs that have driven up the cost of material goods that are used for building homes, but we also need to help provide federal grant funding to our communities to build the infrastructure that those homes depend on. Right now, you see across our district how we are getting once a decade rains once a year that are flooding out families, that are flooding our streets and communities.
Thank you.
We must update the infrastructure, and that is the role the federal government should be playing to help us, and I will use my experience to do that for our community.
All right, we are switching up a little bit. We're going to do a short answer round right now. So for a change of pace, we're looking for short answers, you know, like 15 seconds or less, maybe one word. We'll see. I'll hand it to Barret.
Okay, I'm going to.
We've been doing so well at the timer so far.
That's right. You're running a deficit there. Impeachment is in the air. So let's put aside President Trump, because I think everybody in the thing would say we should be impeaching Donald Trump. But if you only had one person in his cabinet to impeach, who would it be? Right?
So I have to say my top two have already been removed. So I'm a little sad I missed the chance. It would have been Kristi Noem, then Pam Bondi. Hegseth is who's left, and that's a special one.
All good candidates. I'll say, as a county which has already experienced a number of measles cases, RFK is the one who has to go for me.
It's like shooting fish in a barrel. I you know, Marco Rubio is such a lapdog, you know, like I think he's somebody who needs to go.
Thank you. Now this is look, ICE is a big question, but we're looking for a short answer because some people are able to say this very quickly. So what would you do about ICE? Abolish ICE, reform ICE, keep ICE as it is. And I guess we'll start with Beth on this one.
Go back to the drawing board. We need a system that is humane and streamlined, that keeps people safe and allows everyone who plays by the rules a way to full path to citizenship.
Thank you. Ms. Phillips-Staley?
Abolish ICE, it cannot be reformed. Separate customs enforcement from immigration enforcement, rather from immigration and naturalization, return it to what it once was when my mother immigrated to this country, a way to help her come in. And that's what we should be doing.
Thank you. And Ms. Conley?
When I talk about barely recognizing the country that I love and have fought for and sacrificed for, it's watching federal agents on American streets assault, harass, and kill the very people they're sworn to serve and protect. No one is above the rule of law, no one, and everyone will be held accountable. And that is where reining this in up and down the leadership board needs to happen. But we also must fix the broken immigration system, where we are failing our neighbors and members of our community. There are people in our community who've lived in America longer than I've been born and are just as American as I am, or you are. I know this was not a topic to go short on,
But
guys.
I know it's
just
a tough one.
not.
But now I can ask to specify. I mean, so is that reform or is that abolish?
I believe that we need to promote immigration, which means we're going to need immigration enforcement. But that has to happen from people who follow the law and adhere to the law. And if they don't, they will face legal consequences. I'd abolish ICE.
Okay. Let's move forward and assume that one of you has been elected to the United States Congress and you're in Washington. Who would you support as your party's leader? Would you support Hakeem Jeffries? Beth?
Yes, I would. I think he has really held the caucus together in a way that the Senate has not been as successful. And I'd like to give him the chance to lead, our fellow New York guy.
Effie?
Wow, it's a trick question, isn't it? I'm not super happy with him. I'm going to be honest on an immense amount of things. I think he could be a lot stronger, but in the end, the Democrats have to come together to be able to fight back the Republicans.
Which is what?
Yes, but I think it's not just on him to lead. Like, it's on us there to lead. And I promise if I am your rep, I will fight and go to the mat every day and be as vocal as possible about doing the right thing and calling out what is wrong. That's not on one person. That's on all of us. This is our country. It's ours to fight for.
Thank you. And now a commercial break for some restaurant recommendations. What is your favorite restaurant in the district? And we'll start with Ms. Phillips-Staley.
Oh my goodness. Wow. And that's the hardest question. Oh my God. I love El Rey Salvadoreño, which is in Ossining, because it's a Salvadoran restaurant. It has the best pupusas, which my mother always made, but she never taught me to make because she thought that was her job. So I'm terrible at making them. So I go there to get them and they're delicious.
Thank
Everyone
you.
should go.
I'm writing these down. Thank you.
Go.
Ms. Conley,
It's
favorite
good.
restaurant.
The Blue Pig in Croton. There is no other ice cream, I have learned. And I have to tell you, the hardest 2 months of this campaign was when they were closed. And if anyone had seen my garage freezer, it may have been stocked with pints.
It is spring again. It's ice cream season. Good.
They're back open. Everything is right. It's fine.
Thank you. And Ms. Davidson, favorite restaurant.
We have an embarrassment of riches in downtown Nyack, but I'm going to give a shout out to the Taste of Ukraine. It's a wonderful family restaurant, and go in and order off the menu. Just go to the table next door and see what the big Ukrainian family is having and ask them to make it for you. It's terrific.
So that's a political statement as well as a restaurant choice. All right, so we're now back to the full questions, but let's try to keep it within that minute and 30 seconds, please, as we go forward. Mike Lawler said that even under the big, beautiful bill provisions, not a single qualified U.S. citizen will be denied Medicaid coverage. Is he telling the truth?
No, sorry, who's going first? I just was
You
going to
are,
yell
yeah.
liar.
Go ahead.
No, let's be real. Everything that comes out of his lips is usually a lie for his own political preservation. We have already seen how Medicaid cuts are impacting 37,000 people just in our district alone. But what he has done is not just waged war on folks who are struggling the most in our communities. We've also watched in that same bill, Mike Lawler wage war against women's health care. where now you see how federal funding has been ripped away from clinics that provide abortion access, period. Hudson Valley Peconic right here in our communities, 11 brick and mortar clinics, 2 mobile. In 2024, they provided over 94,000 services like annual exams, pre-cancer screenings. Those types of facilities are who Mike Lawler has allowed this administration to rip support away from. There's a war on women's health care, and I will be damned if I'm going to let these guys sit by and try to attack us. This is where we are going to take the fight to them. And what they continue to do, to have policies of cruelty that exploit our most vulnerable in order to line the pockets of billionaires, is un-American. It is wrong, and it is something that should get him fired in November.
When I first started on the NYCD school board, one of my colleagues had a saying that really stuck with me, and it was, show me your budget and I'll tell you your priorities. Mike Lawler voted to send $170 billion to ICE and DHS while cutting our health care. And next year's budget that the president has proposed is $1.3 trillion to defense spending, again, cutting so many healthcare and other social services programs. I've learned so much about Medicaid since the beginning of this campaign. Yes, it is healthcare for low-income families, but it's so much more. It's transportation for people with special needs to their jobs that also Medicaid helps them get. It's supportive housing. It's so many other wraparound services that cover children in elementary schools. We just voted for some Medicaid funding for a program in North Rockland High School for kids with special needs. And we're also seeing a mental health crisis in this country that is only going to get worse. I've been speaking with our hospital systems. We have 2 safety net hospitals in Rockland County. Another messaging mistake we continue to make as Democrats is only talking about rural hospitals. Medicaid affects everyone. Medicaid affects the overwhelming majority of the patients at Good Sam. And if we don't turn this problem around, we're going to see everyone's healthcare compromised as we see emergency rooms become the war zones of the 90s. No one wants that back.
Effie?
I think it's very telling that shortly after Mike Lawler voted for the big ugly bill, he went to a Save Medicare rally. And that is exactly the kind of doublespeak that he does. It is appalling. He is absolutely shameless. So we have to do, and then I'm going to add this. Again, $1.5 billion a day spent on the war in Iraq, right? So we understand where their priorities are, and their priorities are not about serving the people of this district or the people of this nation. It is about serving a rigged system that he benefits from. He's doing a great job at taking care of the people that fund his campaigns, that now fund his steak dinners and his very nice hotels, right? While children go without health care, while children with special needs go without health care. My mother is 90 years old. Medicare helps pay for her nursing home, and it helps pay for her care as she's slowly going blind, right? It is absolutely disgusting that Mike Lawler has no moral compass and that he can allow all these people to suffer, countless people to suffer. And it is not something that we can allow anymore. I will say this, ACA is important. We have to get back to it. We have to protect it, but we also have to treat healthcare as a human right.
Thank you.
And that is why I believe in Medicare for all.
Thank you. Ms. Davidson, I believe you mentioned Indian Point earlier. You're actually going first on this one. Congressman Lawler has proposed reopening Indian Point as a nuclear power plant. Do you support reopening the plant? And if not, how do you think the state of New York should meet its growing energy needs without that? So again, 90 seconds to Ms. Davidson first.
Thank you. I think the one curse word we're allowed to say here is hell. So I'll repeat what I said, which is hell no. And as the chair of the Water Task Force in Rockland County and the Environmental Committee, this is something I'd had my eye on for a long time. Over last fall, when the federal court overturned the Save the Hudson Act, thank you to Assemblywoman Levenberg and Senator Pete Harcum, who passed that bill to say that Holtec could not discharge radiological water into the Hudson, because we know that no amount of radiation is safe for the human body. I represent 3 major river town communities in Rockland County, and I know that so many in Putnam and Westchester depend on the Hudson for our livelihoods as well. So absolutely not to reopening a 64-year-old bucket of bolts. And if Mike Lawler and Energy Secretary think that we can lower energy costs quickly by doing that, when Holtec itself and the federal government admit it would take at least 5 years and cost between $8 and $12 billion, I've got a bridge to sell them, and you can call it whatever you want, Tappan Zee, Mario Cuomo, whatever. What Mike Lawler should have done was not vote to gut the clean energy tax credits that would have created 60,000 new clean energy jobs here in New York State. That is our clean energy future. That is our jobs future. That is our healthcare future. I'm a 2-time cancer survivor. I'm not interested in becoming a 3rd. This stops here.
Thank you. And Ms. Phillips-Staley on Indian Point.
I mean, I suppose it was no surprise to me that Mike Lawler has proposed reopening Indian Point, because Mike Lawler does not work for the people. He is not a public servant. He is a person who actually works for the people who fund him. And this is, and I think perhaps many of us know that he was, I think, a gas lobbyist, actually, before he decided to run for office. So it is absolutely insane to me that we would continue to pour more money into technology of the 20th century when we should be investing in the technology of the 21st century and beyond. It is that simple. It is insane to me. And frankly, the only way to explain it is that he's working to line the pockets of the people that he's actually working for. It makes no sense, after all the hard work that so many activists did for so long to close down a plant with so many violations and built on 2 fault lines. Let's not forget that next to this population, it's insane. So absolutely, we have to get our Congress back under control, and we need to redirect it on the technologies of the future. We have the money. We have the intellectual capacity. We have the people power. We need to stop wasting time, which is why we have to get Mike Lawler out.
Thank you. And Ms. Conley.
So I grew up swimming in the Hudson River during the era of dredge or don't dredge because of the PCBs from the GE plant. And Indian Point is probably why I glow at night. At least that's why Riverkeeper tells me. It's real. But the reality is, Indian Point was built in the 1950s based off the 1940s understanding of nuclear technology on a geological fault line that we would never approve today. So no, we don't need to reopen it. Yes, we have a real problem. That is our energy crisis. And the fact that we're going to live in a more technologically driven world where that's going to continue to go up. But when you look at what solutions can provide immediate relief and what we can harness here in the Hudson Valley, it's solar, it's geothermal, it's wind, it's these things that we were doing until Donald Trump and Lawler stopped them. And this is what we should be doing more of. And if we do it right, there is tremendous economic opportunity. I want to invest in our public educational systems and expand things like BOCES in our community colleges. I would love for us to have a solar panel repair and installation technician program at BOCES. You want to talk about how we get to greater energy autonomy? Create programs that allow people to afford to put these types of technologies in their homes and businesses. But the other thing we must do is hold these monopoly utility companies accountable. Where I come from as a leader, when you fail, you get fired, not executive compensation bonuses of $15 million, Con Ed. They don't get off the hook. They get hauled in front of Congress.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Every member in Congress talks about the virtues of working across the aisle. So let's say you're in a position to work on a compromise based on the Republicans' voting rights bill, their Save America bill. Is there a provision in that bill, the Republican version, voter ID, proof of citizenship, that you could live with?
Who's going first? And is this a trick question?
Beth.
Effie? Sorry, who'd say? Oh,
Yeah, Effie first, please.
Oh, is it me? Oh, sorry. There's nothing I could live with in that bill. I mean, this is a very, I mean, and for very specific reasons. I mean, when we think about what it takes to prove, like what we need a federal ID. I have one. I paid $100 and something for my passport, right? We need this to register. How are we going to enable people to pay this much money to vote? It's like a poll tax. Women's names, like I have a hyphenated married name, right? So now I have to go and find my birth certificate to be able to enroll. I mean, this is simply designed to prevent people from voting when we already have a problem of not enough civic engagement, not enough civic participation. And so we're going to make it harder. There has been almost no fraud that has been identified. So why on earth would we put this many difficult obstacles to be able to do what is at the basis of our democracy, civic participation? You know, we're the ones, the people are the bosses, right? Not the president, not Mike Lawler. The people are in charge. And this bill is insane. It is designed to prevent the people from participating. It's another slide towards autocracy. Yeah, I can't live with any part of it.
Thank you. Now, Beth. Beth. Cait, I'll never get this straight, but Cait, your turn.
Keep us on our toes. I need you to just hear me, and this has nothing to even do with this race. I was literally the federal government lead for election security. Non-citizen voting is not a real issue, period. It is already a federal crime for a non-citizen to vote in a federal election. This is not a real problem. This is not impacting outcomes of elections. This is a red herring for this administration to create more terms for voter suppression. This is about Donald Trump trying to salvage the 2026 midterm elections for the Republicans because he knows the American people are fed up and he doesn't want to hear their voice. This is about voter suppression. It is very clear. Administering elections is a states' rights issue. It is states that are charged with this duty, not the federal government. And Donald Trump needs to stay the hell out of it because this is about American democracy. This is where state and local election officials who are from our communities, of our communities, have their charge. And I will tell you, as someone who has proudly worked with them on both sides of the political aisle across this country, they are incredible patriots working hard every day to make real American democracy real. And Donald Trump has gone after them. I watch as he incited domestic groups to target election officials. We cannot allow this type of animosity to fester, and we cannot allow Donald Trump's disinformation campaign to succeed. So no.
Thank you. Beth.
Even the very name of this act tells you everything you need to know about the Republican Party and how badly they would like to pick their voters rather than the other way around. The SAVE Act. Save from whom? Save from their own demolition, as we're seeing. Donald Trump always says the quiet part out loud. If we don't pass the SAVE Act, we lose. And that is why they have pushed so hard to do this and why Mike Lawler has gone along with it. And shame on him. What we need to do is retake the House so we can reintroduce and finally pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. I'm so proud to carry the endorsement of Dr. Francis Pratt, a civil rights icon, former NAACP president, who literally was beaten fighting for the right to vote. And these are the very communities that Donald Trump and Mike Lawler say should not have that right. It's disgusting. And as a member of the county legislature who oversees our election, our board of elections, I know how hard they work. I know how hard they work to make sure that everything is buttoned up and that everyone has a chance to vote. And that's what we need to push towards and absolutely shut the SAVE Act down.
Thank you. Now, we are in a new world of artificial intelligence. Are you more excited about the possibilities or more frightened by it? And what should Congress's priority be in responding to this new paradigm of AI? And we'll start with Ms. Conley here. And actually, let's just do 1 minute for this one because, you know, we're wrapping up here. We got to get a few more questions in. So, yeah, 1 minute. Are you freaked out by AI or are you excited by it?
All right, this is going to take longer than a minute. Look, I believe AI is going to help us cure cancer, reverse the effects of climate change, and do tremendous good. But we must ensure that is used for good. And that will not happen by itself. That will not happen if tech companies are allowed to do whatever the heck they want. That is why the federal government needs to step up and put firm guardrails and regulation in to make sure that public safety and security is the paramount thing guiding development. Tech companies have failed to do this on their own time and time again, from software and the internet to social media. We cannot afford to make this mistake again. And that is why I believe it is so important to have members of Congress who understand tech. The average age of a Democrat in Congress is like 1,000 right now. I have literally been in classified meetings with members who didn't understand the technology I was briefing them on. We need a generation that can come in who knows what it is doing to make sure we are putting in guardrails, regulating responsibly, and in protecting American jobs.
Thank you. That was a pretty good minute. That was good. Yeah. Ms. Davidson on AI.
As a writer, I definitely can see how my job would be and has been impacted by artificial intelligence. And I'm also concerned about the impact it's having on our schools and on our children and on the ability to create creative problem solvers and critical thinkers. This isn't something we can count on if we don't put serious guardrails on AI, just as we have on social media. We also need to be not exporting our chips to China and other countries so that they, again, beat us at one more game and fill a vacuum of power and influence, and we cede that ground once again. I'm very concerned about having no entry-level workforce. And so we need to make sure that we're also incentivizing corporations to upskill their workers, because if people don't understand how to use AI, they will lose their jobs. And we do need to make sure that we have real regulations and people in Washington who understand what's at stake and aren't beholden to AI companies.
Thank you. And Ms. Phillips-Staley on AI.
It's the Wild West with tech, unfortunately. We've seen incredible developments with AI. Of course, it's extraordinary, but with absolutely no guardrails. So as a mother with an 18-year-old son in college, the question that I'm getting from him is like, what kind of a job am I going to have when you look at the reports of the kinds of jobs that are going to disappear from AI, which is basically, if you're sitting at a desk with a computer, your job might be gone, and it might be gone very soon and much faster than any of us imagined. So the problem is, which I tie it to, is that corporations have too much influence over our government. Our government needs to stay on top of making sure that the people are taken care of, but it's almost impossible to do in a system like this, where elected officials work for the donor class instead of the people. That is something that we have to fix now, and we absolutely need to put guardrails on this, not just for jobs, but in regards to the military, which is very scary when you see AI combined with the military.
Thank you. Thank you. There was in the last election cycle here, $26 million in outside spending. Would you be happy if that super PAC spending went away, or are you perfectly happy as long as it's coming your way to keep it around?
Beth first, yeah.
So my secret, my dirty secret, is that I actually do love campaigning. I love going to all the events. I love shaking hands. I love learning about people's stories and how we can make their lives better. And I also am a policy nerd. I love learning about every possible law and policy and solution out there, but so much of our time as candidates is spent raising money. That's the truth. I would absolutely support overturning Citizens United and get money out of politics for good. And that's really where we have to go, is finally serious campaign finance reform so that we can get money out of politics and put Congress back to work for the people.
Effie?
It's my dirty secret too that I love campaigning as well. I like it a lot. But of course, Citizens United has to be overturned because, look, Mike Lawler is a perfect example. This is a guy who works for the people who put him in office in terms of who pays the bills for him. He's not working for the people. So the state of New York, with its matching funds, with this 8-to-1 match, is actually a fantastic policy. I wish it applied at the federal level because those funds are taxpayer dollars and we are supposed to be accountable to the people. So that is a reasonable fix for this incredible problem where you see 25 million spent on a campaign. And what that means is that the only people who can run are people who are already plugged into the parties where the money flows. If we have to compete with someone who has 10 million, 5 million, or, it is impossible for ordinary people to be able to do this. And our House of Representatives should be filled with ordinary people who represent the people, who are of the people, who are not tied to the donor class, who have their own special interests.
The Supreme Court decision on Citizens United will go down as the worst thing, one of the worst things in American history to happen to American democracy. It is allowing that kind of dark money that allowed Elon Musk to give Mike Lawler $1.7 million in 2024. I don't know if you all read a few weeks ago, but the crypto super PAC, Fair Shake, just identified Mike Lawler as one of the 6 incumbents that they are going to spend tens of millions of dollars on this November. Okay? So whether I like it or not, I would love to end Citizens United. It's not happening. Not right now. When we get to Congress, yes, but not right now. And I think this goes back to the importance of why we were before you. Because despite all of their efforts to try to rig November, despite the fact that we are going to have outside groups pouring tens of millions of dollars behind Mike Lawler, we still have to beat him. And this goes back to, we cannot take chances. We have watched Mike Lawler take on and beat politicians already. We want a different outcome. You need a different Democrat. So let's kick his butt this November.
Thank you. Now I want to leave a little time for closing statements. So I want to do 2 quick short answer questions. Since many of you are about to be walking to your cars, I have a couple car questions. So the first one, we'll start with Ms. Phillips-Staley. Again, short answer, congestion pricing. This has been put in place by the state. The federal government has tried to stop it. Do you think that congestion pricing should stay in place, or do you think the price should go down, the price should go up? What is your quick answer on that?
I think congestion pricing has been wildly successful. And it is something that's good for the environment. I don't know if anyone else drives in Manhattan. I do sometimes, and it's significantly better. So I think that was a win, and I would keep it as it is.
Thank you. Ms. Conley?
So where we really hurt working people was in the fact that we have not invested in direct transit in Orange and Rockland counties in the west side of the river to get directly into Manhattan. It's real easy for people to say that when you don't have to take a 2-hour bus ride or play planes, trains, and automobiles to try to get there. I'm all about public transit, but we owe it to working families to invest in it and not just tax them more. And I do not believe that New York City problems should be solved on the backs of Hudson Valley residents.
Thank you. So kill congestion pricing?
Yes.
All right. Ms. Davidson?
As the chair of the environmental committee, I absolutely appreciate the need to reduce the amount of cars on the road so we can bring down that carbon footprint. But we are disproportionately impacted in Rockland County, where we do not have a one-seat ride into the city. I did used to commute to Soho from Nyack every single day, and it took about 2 hours on the way in and an hour and a half on the way home. I support congestion pricing with carve-outs for first responders, teachers, so many people in Rockland County.
All right. Thank you.
Commute into the city, so carve-outs for them.
And last short answer question is Congressman Mike Lawler has made a very big deal of wanting to rename the Governor Mario M. Cuomo Bridge. Quick answer with Ms. Conley. Do you support renaming the bridge?
Look, I grew up with the Tappan Zee. It will always be the Tappan Zee to me. I also want to say we screwed this up because they didn't build rail transit when they rebuilt the bridge.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Davidson.
It costs so much money to rename the bridge and even add an M in the middle when it was forgotten the first time. Let's call it the Pete Seeger Bridge. That sounds better to me.
Thank you, and Ms. Phillips-Staley.
Look, I see it, you know, from my village, and I always call it the Tappan Zee. I can't really call it anything else.
Thank you very much. All right. So with that, we're going on to closing statements, 2 minutes each, and we're going to go reverse order from what we started with. So we're starting with Ms. Davidson, then Ms. Conley, then Ms. Phillips-Staley. Closing statements. Take it away, Beth.
Thank you so much. Thank you again to the Westchester County Democratic Committee, to our intrepid chair, Suzanne Berger and Bruce Campbell, for doing so much work to put this together, and to our moderators, Barret and Jeff, and to all of you for caring enough to come out tonight. You know, the one question that I get all the time out on the campaign trail, and you should be asking any of us, is what gets you out of bed every morning to do this? And tonight you've heard all of our ideas, some very similar, some different, but for me, it's really simple. And it's my community, our community is really counting on me. I'm thinking of the girls who were my Girl Scouts when I was a leader, who told me that when their school lunch accounts ran low, they were denied a hot lunch. So that when I was elected to Nyack School Board, I worked hard every day until finally every public school child in Nyack Public Schools had access to a free lunch. I'm doing it for my constituents who are just one medical bill or unexpected car repair away from losing their jobs, from losing their homes, from losing their childcare. This is real to me. Of course, I'm doing it for our immigrant neighbors who are terrified of being ripped from their families and disappeared, of our LGBTQ community who has been under attack from day one of this administration. Of course, I want to be clear that while you've heard different answers from all of us on all of these topics, there is one person who is responsible for all the ways in which our communities are truly suffering, and that is our Congressman, Mike Lawler. We have to beat him, and I know how to do it. We do it by holding him accountable for his out-of-step, radical right-wing record on everything from gun safety to the environment to women's health to, of course, Trump's illegal war. We do it by inspiring people about what is possible when you have leaders who are ready to stand into the breach, fighting for clean drinking water, fighting for gun safety legislation, and protecting our immigrant neighbors from ICE. And by winning on the ground, as I have done over 2 decades in this community, and by electing pro-choice Democratic women all across the country to stand up to Trump's regime.
Thank you.
And by leading the team that won the first Democratic supermajority in Rockland County history. That's the fight I'm ready to take to Mike Lawler and to Congress with your support on June 23rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Conley. Closing statement.
We talked about so many really important issues tonight and about how we can shape this country so America's best days are still ahead of us, and fix the so many wrongs that have happened under this administration led by Trump and enabled by cowards like Mike Lawler. But we don't get to fix any of that unless we get to govern. And the only way we get to govern is if we win. And so tonight, And the next several weeks, this is about who is your best athlete to get in the arena and make sure Mike Lawler goes home. Make sure that he is unemployed and must find his next career come this November. Because we cannot risk losing to this man. Not again. We've got to have learned that the strategies that were played out the last 2 cycles have failed. And we have to do things differently if we want a different outcome. And that is where I am so proud of the momentum we have been able to build all across this district, earning over 50 endorsements from local leaders and organizations, the only candidate to earn endorsements from all 4 counties. We have to win. These are not normal times. These are not normal stakes, and they're probably not going to be normal elections. And we still must win. And this is where it comes down to all of us doing our part. Look, Mike Lawler, he and I are about the same age, and we grew up 30 miles apart. We could not be more different people. He spent the last 20 years as a political operative while I was leading America's sons and daughters in defense of this nation, defending every single person in this district. And I do believe it is my life of service to this nation that will make a difference in being able to get people to vote for me in November instead of Lawler. And when it comes to having your best athlete in there on day one, I've worked with Congress, I've worked with committees. I know what to do and can sprint for us on day one to check this administration, to fix the path we are on as a nation. And again, make sure that our country's best days are still ahead of us. I cannot do that alone, and that's why I'm standing before you tonight. I would be honored to have you in the arena with me as we kick Lawler's ass.
Thank you, and Ms. Phillips-Staley.
We are at sort of a terrifying turning point within our nation. In many ways, I feel that the slide to authoritarianism has moved a little farther than it should, but it is something that we absolutely can and will stop. I am going to argue this. I believe that we lost twice because we were not as inclusive as we should have been, that we did not listen as much as we should have, and that we took people for granted. And that is what turned people away from our party, the working class, immigrants, so many, so many. So a critical part of entering this race for me was, how are we going to run it? How are we going to be inclusive? How are we going to build the blocks of voters that we need to once and for all defeat a Republican who keeps winning in a Democratic state? I wouldn't have gotten into this race in the first place if I didn't think it was possible to build that kind of a coalition. And that is a coalition that needs to be inclusive of everyone. Hispanic voters, the working class, Muslims, Haitians, so many people that the party doesn't even talk to, young people. Some of you know that I went on Hassan Piker's show, and I will address it. It is because he speaks to young people. Every time you go to an indivisible rally and someone says, where are the young people? I'll tell you where they are. They're listening to streamers like Hassan Piker. We need to build bridges. We need to make sure that everyone feels welcome. And we need to make sure that we turn out the vote in a way that it has never been turned out before in this district to be able to win. And that is the strategy that I have built. That is what I am going to do. I welcome you to participate in this because we have a chance to take it in an entirely new way, and we can do it together. So I appreciate your support. Thank you for being here.
All right, thank you so much to our candidates, and I'd like to hand it over to the Westchester County Democratic Committee Chair, Suzanne Berger. Or maybe to Bruce.
That's okay. I was going to introduce Suzanne too.
You go
First
ahead.
of all,
sorry.
I want to thank you all for being here tonight. I want to thank these three ladies for offering to step forward in their public service. Let's hear the candidates. And I want to remind you that this is one opportunity to hear candidates. You'll have more before the primary on June 23rd to hear from all of them. All right, so thank you. And yes, the chair of our party, Suzanne Berger.
Thank you, Bruce, for all the hard work you and your team did to put this event together tonight. Thank you to Ms. Phillips-Staley, Ms. Davidson, Ms. Conley, our moderators. I really, really appreciate it. I have a few closing remarks. I also want to introduce my fellow county chair from Putnam County, Jen Calamonico, in the back there. For all of you who couldn't hear well enough or wanted to hear the brilliant statements of our candidates again, I will be downloading this onto our Westchester County Democratic Committee YouTube channel tomorrow, God willing. And, and so you will be able to watch it there or tell your friends about it. As Bruce said, there will be many other opportunities between now and what is June 13th? Does anybody know? First day of in-person early voting, June 13th. It's right around the corner. Next week, there's a forum in Haverstraw at Haverstraw Town Hall on April 16th. I was advised that the Northern Westchester League of Women Voters is going to do a forum by Zoom the first week of June. And there'll be many other opportunities. I left on the table outside information about our spring brunch. We're honored to have the Attorney General of the state of New York, the Honorable Letitia James, as our honorable guest. That'll be May 17th, 12:30 to 3 in White Plains at CV Rich Mansion. We hope you all can come and have a good crowd for Attorney General James. I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank especially the 431 people on Zoom. We had over 500 people register for this event. Some of them decided they'd rather stay home and watch it on Zoom. But we have a full house here. Thank you. Thank you for watching it on Zoom. Thank you for paying attention. This is what makes democracy work in this country. Thank you.